From August to November of 2025, I directed my own original stage play called Coup de Prom with the help of a student organization called New Wave Theater Co. at my university. This was my first time ever directing a play, and Coup de Prom was the first play I ever wrote, so this was going to be a process I was going into totally blind. And I'm going to talk about it. That's the video concept. Are you hooked? Should I put some Family Guy clips on the bottom of the screen? Subway Surfers, perhaps? I'll talk very briefly about the plot of the show so that we're mostly on the same page. Coup de Prom follows a high school senior named Jason Pennington who just moved from New York City to the middle of nowhere Greenfield, Indiana with his mom. The town is ripped straight out of a cheesy 80s movie, and all of the students that go there fall into the classic 80s archetypes. Nerds with thick-rimmed glasses, jocks with their Letterman jackets, goths with plastic fangs from Party City. All the highlights. Jason makes good friends with the captain of the basketball team named Luther and the prettiest girl in school named Sierra. Issue being that Sierra is dating a 5'4" walking time bomb in a football jersey named Chad Brikowski. Jason and Sierra's friendship obviously causes some tension between Jason and Chad, which leads to some typical high school hijinks, such as Jason and Sierra sneakily attending the homecoming football game together, and Chad soccer kicking Jason in the head so hard he gets knocked into a coma. Yada yada, plot elements. The climax of the show involves Chad orchestrating a coup at prom, in which he plans to kidnap Jason before he gets crowned as prom king and literally kill him. Get it? A coup at prom? Coup de prom? Like the title? Absolute cinema, I know. What are we, some kind of Suicide Squad? Anyway, the show took me a little over 2.5 years to write, primarily due to me taking incredibly long breaks in the middle of writing it, which I know is really uncharacteristic of me, but eventually I got around to finishing it. And once I did, I pitched it to New Wave, which is a student organization at my university which specializes in developing and producing student-written theater. They picked it up for a table read, and then a workshop, and then a staged reading, and then finally they reached out to me the summer before my sophomore year and said that they wanted to fully produce it, to which I replied, hell yeah, that would be pretty cool. So, boom, New Wave wants to put on the show. Now it's my job to put together a production team so that once we're back on campus, we can hit the ground running. I send out some feelers, bring on my friends Chris, Seth, and Parker to be my set designer, stage manager, and sound designer, respectively, and things seem to be rolling. Side note, when I sent the email to New Wave to confirm Parker's production team slot, they sent me a response email that said, "That's great news about Patrick," which I just thought was pretty funny, because it's not like they misheard me or something. They fully read his name, plain as day, in an email, and still called him the wrong name. I didn't know that could happen. Side note over. After confirming those 3 positions, however, things kinda went dead on the production team front. Nobody wanted to commit to positions before they knew what their schedules are going to look like for the next semester, so the trail went cold for the rest of the summer. Should I maybe have spent the time I wasn't using finding new production team members to instead begin preemptively working on blocking since I had never directed a play before? Perhaps. But you're missing the bigger picture, which is that it was summer, and I wasn't going to do that. I had bigger fish to fry. And by that, I mean I wanted to watch The Sopranos and focus on my summer job, yelling at people over a microphone at an amusement park. Which I'm really good at, by the way. But then, summer was over. We were back on campus, and we were right back in the groove of things. I brought on my friend Teddy to be my assistant director. Things were looking great. Then I sit down for a meeting with the New Wave executive board to discuss filling out the rest of my production team and scheduling auditions, and midway through that meeting, we discovered that the week that we thought we had booked the theater for was actually incorrect, and we had in fact actually booked it for the week before, meaning that I had effectively lost a week off of my production cycle out of nowhere. Man, fuck! But we persevered. We strategically scheduled the auditions around the audition date of a different theater student organization and called an end to the meeting. Then, not too long after, I got an email informing me that the room we had booked to hold auditions in was no longer available. So we changed the room, no problem. Then we printed out posters to promote the auditions, only for me to receive another email informing me that the new room we had booked was also unavailable, after I had already put it on posters and hung them all around campus. Man, fuck! But that's alright. I went around and took down all the posters with the wrong room on them, printed out new posters with the new room, and hung them up. Then I received an email telling me that this third room we had booked might not be available either, and that we wouldn't know if we could actually use the room or not until the day of auditions. Man! But it all worked out. The day of auditions came, and we were, in fact, actually allowed to use the room, which was a great relief. Auditions went well. We had just enough people show up to fill out the cast. That's not any fault of the people auditioning. The show just has a massive cast size. And Teddy and I sat down to make up the cast list, which we were able to finalize within around an hour of auditions coming to an end. We sent out role offers to everyone, which everyone accepted, and we were able to fill out the rest of our production team. Shouts out to Abby and Adrian, who did light and costume design respectively. And with that, the rest of the cast and crew were all filled out. Now it was time to get to the fun part, actually directing a show for the first time. With no experience. Another side note, man, I love the cast I had for this show. Genuinely, if any of you are watching this, I cannot thank you all enough. You are some of the most amazingly talented people I have ever worked with, and I am eternally indebted to you for helping me bring this show to life. Everybody fit their roles so perfectly, it was like a dream. Plus, the actors playing Chad and Jason were 5'6" and 6'6", so even the heights were biblically accurate, which is something you just can't teach, you know? Second side note over. In preparation for our first rehearsal, I sat down and attempted to plan out the blocking for the scenes we would be covering ahead of time, only to realize that my brain doesn't work like that and give up on the process immediately. I can't imagine the blocking of a scene in my head. I just can't wrap my head around it. I need to actually physically see the actors and the set pieces in front of me, which is a perfectly acceptable way of blocking scenes, but can sometimes lead to tedious stretches during rehearsals where actors have to sit around twiddling their thumbs while I talk myself through where they should be placed on the stage. That being said, I couldn't believe how much fun I was having once we finally got into a rhythm with the blocking. Coup Prom has a lot of large group scenes that can involve upwards of 7 or 8 people grouping together at once, usually around a lunch table, and so one of my favorite bits to pull out during blocking was the Last Supper, where we would have all of the actors sit in a line on one side of a very small table. And it's bits like that that really justify, to me at least, not blocking scenes until you can actually see them in front of you. On paper, arranging the actors like that is incredibly stupid, but in practice, when you can actually see it, it's incredibly stupid, but also very fucking funny. Once we got in the groove of things, time just started to fly. Despite the occasional drama, and by drama I mean Chris getting very publicly upset with me because I didn't give him adequate directions on where to park his car outside of our rehearsal space, everything was going swimmingly. Scenes were flowing, people were laughing, people were beating the hell out of each other. It was like a well-oiled machine. Then, coming in to rain on our parade was probably the most nightmarish, hellish experience I have ever had to suffer through, that being finalizing the show's budget. At the beginning of the production process, New Wave had given me a date by which I was to submit Coup Prom's final itemized budget, which involved providing Amazon links to literally every single item we were intending to purchase for the show, as well as the quantity of the item and the item's price. This, in and of itself, was not a problem. Tedious, yes, but not a problem. The problem came when we submitted the budget for approval. And then waited. And waited. And waited. And waited for it to be approved. Which it finally was, the literal week of the show. Meaning we had 1 week to get every single item we needed shipped to the school and implemented into the show. The painted backdrops we had intended to use as the primary set dressing for every single scene in the show. You can kiss those goodbye, you're not going to have time to make up any of those, but at least we got Chad's funny little leather football cap from the 40s. I don't blame New Wave for this. This was really more of a fault of the university's general bureaucracy and administration, but boy, oh boy, did it fill me with the most crippling stress I have ever had to contend with in my life. You can also combine the stress I was experiencing over budget with the fact that our theater we were performing in was primarily designed to host lecture events and not actual theatrical productions, meaning it had next to zero wing space to put all of the set pieces we actually did have in. Side note number 3, holy hell, that theater is crazy. No wing space, you're not allowed to actually physically construct any permanent sets in it because of the building's fire code, meaning that besides tables and chairs, essentially everything in the set had to be made from foam board, and the light board basically doesn't exist. And there's a scene at the climax of the show in which Chad falls off of a cliff, I reached out to my contact at the theater to see if I would be allowed to actually throw the actor off of the stage onto a crash pad, and they replied that such an act would not be allowed because the theater didn't have insurance in the event that the actor was hurt. What do you mean you don't have insurance? Side note 3, over. But despite all the stress, everything came together. The show nights came, and I think all in all, the show was pretty damn good. It was actually incredibly surreal seeing my own show put on stage, and I was so proud of everyone involved in the show. Everyone did so amazing. I cannot put into words how much love I have for Coup Prom and everyone who worked on it. And that's it. That's my experience writing and directing my own play. Before we end, here's some other stuff about the show that I wanted to talk about but couldn't otherwise organically work into the script. Our production of Coup Prom is the first and probably the only one that will ever make the school's mascot the Greenfield Corn Jerkers. It played a surprisingly large role in our production, but the school actually doesn't have an official mascot in the script. At the end of the show, we had the aforementioned Greenfield Corn Jerker arrive at a funeral and place his costume on the coffin's lid as a sign of respect. It took all 3 showings of the show to get the timing of this down properly to elicit the target reaction from the audience. This isn't really a fact, but here's a clip of us recording voiceover lines for the show in a sound booth.
3, 2...
Ah! You bitch! No! Help me! Fuck! Ah!
Okay.
We were promptly asked to stop. And last but not least, Coup Prom is available on Amazon, and I would love it if anyone watching put on their own production of the show. Coup Prom is my baby, and I want nothing more than for it to grow and expand anywhere and everywhere. And that's pretty much it. I just finished writing another play about pirates killing the Pope, so you may or may not be hearing about that one sometime in the future, but until then, see ya.